Yeah. A couple dots passed.
All right, I call city operations to order. Is everybody here? Everyone is here? Oh, no, Alderman George. I make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Seconded by Alderman Crawford. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No unfinished business. New referrals for consideration. King Street Park presentation. Who is that?
It's the bride.
Carrie, is that your computer?
No.
Your laptop? Okay.
It's a city.
If you're done, you'll leave it hooked up?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay. As you're aware, Kaboom, we received some funding from them in the amount of $15,000 from Kaboom and Carrie Dr. Pepper, and then the city had a match financially and in kind as well, and we'll get to that towards the very end of the presentation with a breakdown for the budget. We'll be removing the outdated equipment that you see here with the swings. I don't even know what you call that horse thing anymore. Merry-go-round in this slide. I think it's a spring, and then this teeter-totter will go. And then we're going to be keeping the large wooden play equipment that's there, that play structure. And
That's safe.
Yes.
There's a lot of splinters and stuff in there.
Splinters grow big kids.
It wasn't the pressure treated stuff, was it? That they had
No, I mean,
basically shouldn't have.
It is, but it's been there for a long time, so that's leached out. They'll do by law now.
Okay.
It's been grandfathered in.
Okay.
This is the site plan that Bob prepared. You'll see that the existing trees that are there, there are some proposed trees, and there may be some removal of those large pine trees that are there. You'll see there's an ADA path that will be going to the fall protection, and the oodle swing that will be installed is actually an ADA swing as well. And then there's the large playground equipment that will be going there. The oodle swing is on the left, then there's the seesaw, the regular swings, and then the large equipment. And we were trying to be creative in the order, with it being King Street Park. We were trying to find the one that looked most kind of like a castle. We were trying to have it that type of theme.
That's cool. Yeah.
And that is the budget that you may recall from when we did the application submittal. Total project cost of the $63,180. The playground equipment that includes the large structure and all the smaller pieces that you see. The site preparation, the fall protection, the DPW in-kind, and the funds that were committed within DPW's budget, and then also. You'll recall last year, the council had saved $25,050 to go towards the upgrades to this. And now this project is unique because of it being the different program with Kaboom. We actually have to have a build day, and the build day is September 28th. And we'll need volunteers for that. And those that would like to be involved in planning, the build day and getting volunteers, we actually have a build day plan that we previously submitted to Kaboom for its review and approval, which it's done, so we can share that for those that would like that. The build day will start at 8 a.m. With volunteers arriving, and then DPW will have a good majority of it really in place and put together, and the ribbon cutting is at 4 p.m.
Awesome.
The girls basketball team at St. Bonaventure committed to help, and Allison from there, who's the director of operations, said she would contact other teams to see if they were interested, and I've secured 3 men in the neighborhood that are interested, and then I'll approach the PTO in September.
I'm in.
To do that.
Okay.
Yeah, Kelly.
It's a
and,
place marker.
The
Remember
Bonaventure
to call
players,
it.
They know what they're doing because they helped with the one in Salamanca.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they said.
Is this a similar style to
It is.
what happened in Salamanca?
Exactly.
Yeah, great.
It's a lot of fun.
So there is actually gonna go,
I'm in.
pavement's gonna go down, by the basketball hoop?
I'm not. I'm out.
I think, Bob, was that, just
about
an
you?
upgrade to the basketball hoop?
Yeah, and some people in the neighborhood requested like pavement be put on there, so we're just gonna do it.
What's wrong with playing on grass? That's the only hoop I think in town that there's no cement there, right? Isn't it just grass?
Like old school.
It's like old, that's where I grew up. That's where I honed my talents.
You know, another unique addition that's going to be added is it's a 1/4 mile walking
That's
trail
cool.
with crushed stone.
Really?
Crushed stone. No barefoot walking there now.
That's what's been occurring, and that's a timeline. That's all I have.
Well done.
Okay. Anybody else have questions or comments on that?
I have a lot of pictures from the one in Salamanca if you want to see what they did down there. I'm more than happy to share them with you.
And then,
You send me that
yeah, the build date plan?
in this thing.
Yes, and the site plan.
Okay, moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion North 7th Street city-owned property. Who is this one?
That's me. I'm gonna jump on the computer since we have access to it. Excuse me.
What's wrong, Bobby?
Let's see here. So just in case I have any confidential emails here, how do I?
Blur out the images.
There we go. No, I just want to log in my city email. Mail. How do we log into a city email? Mail.
First name, last name, first initial.
Oh shoot, I don't even know my password. It's just
It's-
saved.
It's,
No, this is just.
and city computers
Do
are
you
all
want-
audible,
I'm
so
gonna
you have to
send it
s-
to myself.
you got to speak
I'm gonna
your
send it to
password
myself.
into the computer.
Forward it to myself here. Sorry guys. Let's try that.
Using your personal email for city business, huh? That's what Hillary did.
Scott Fairwell.
Bathroom server.
Fox
Bathrooms. Oh yeah.
Or wait,
Blue
Scott's
server in the
Fox
bathroom.
Financial or Dresser? One of the two.
Sexy John Stallion at yahoo.com.
Were you up late last night?
No, that was the last couple nights. Why you drive by my house? Been drinking in the
No,
front
I
yard
wasn't
lately.
stalking you.
What's up?
I wasn't stalking you.
No.
That was Nate.
Good. We've been busy. Running pretty hard.
Met your mom on Sunday.
She said you were at Rock City Park.
Yeah, I haven't been there since 2008. 1998.
1998?
1998.
Wow.
Yeah, it was my dad's, hey, I'm getting divorced, I'm taking my kids to Rock City
Well,
Park.
thanks for going up. You guys have fun?
Yeah. Yeah, we did. Oh, I got all these photos of my dad's girlfriend and us kids.
So make sure you play on those racks.
No, now I got photos of my mom and her new wife on Rock City. So now I've got, 2 decades before my dad and his girlfriend.
I apologize in advance, we tried.
It's a good place to get married. When you start your marriage on the rocks, it's nowhere but up.
You gotta sign up if it says that, right?
Not just my brain. And my mouth.
Told your dad we were gonna leave the 2-year-old up there. He just
Oh, I'm sure he was still with that.
yeah. He was just miserable. So we were like, hey, we're gonna leave you in this rock pile here. Just
All right,
yell
I
for
think we're
dad.
Nate's dad or your son?
I think
What?
we're good.
Nate's dad or the 2-year-old?
The 2-year-old.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, on 7th Street, here is the one, this is Sullivan, or no, I'm sorry, this is 7th Street, and where I'm standing is on Sullivan Hill, okay? This is where the property that the city owned blight property that was demoed last year or 6 months ago. What I've noticed is, and I've asked DPW to put up barriers, the sidewalk that you can kind of see, so it kind of needs to be mowed, but the sidewalk all through this property, and I believe it's our property, has eroded and is literally falling down the hill. So it's no longer safe because it's such a steep incline here that sidewalk is no longer, you can't even repair it. There's nothing left of it. And on the other side of the hill, okay, so over here is North 7th, looking the other direction, 180 degrees. You can see where it's starting to happen on this side of North 7th Street as well. So it's not quite as bad, but we're going to be having issues there too. And so I wanted to bring this up to the mayor, to the council. I've sent this, met with Bob Ring up there, and I guess to come up with some sort of remedy, what do we do? This, I don't know whether or not can be saved. The other side is in really bad shape. Not to mention, I believe, and I don't know if anyone's been in contact with the demolition company, but they didn't do us any favors. The property is in pretty bad condition. They've left a bunch of tree branches, and they even cracked some of the sidewalk with their vehicles. It's in bad shape if you want to take a walk over there.
John, did they fill in where the house was taken down?
The house has been filled in. There is a big, so that in essence has been filled in, but there's been no cleanup efforts. And like I said, if you go further down this hill where their demo trucks and stuff drove in there, the sidewalk's all broken and cracked. And then up in this area, the sidewalk is just completely falling down the hill. So I guess I would like to know what are some options or remedies that, that we can pursue.
So the second set of photos you showed us, those are across Sullivan Street on the
Yep.
200 block? I don't believe, does the city own that property? Because I remember that going up for tax auction a couple years ago, and it didn't sell.
I don't think we do.
So that would be the property owner at that property, which might be Cat County still.
Now,
But we would still have to give them an order to
Correct.
fix
Correct.
this
Yeah.
situation, or else
Now-
we're going to be in the same boat.
this side has a lot of trees laying in it. Will they come back and take those?
On this side, they
This
did do
side.
some, there was some cutting, I don't know who was doing the cutting, but they have taken down some large trees in that area.
I think a construction company just bought that. So they're talking about putting clean fill in
Clean fill maybe?
there. Yeah. I know we don't like to use names, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then actually, if you drive up there today, I passed the truck that was hauling away the house that's on the other
Yeah.
side of
Correct.
7th. That just went away today.
Across the street, one of the blighted properties came down today. Was that us
Land bank, I believe.
or the land bank?
Land bank. Which,
But this property, and I don't, I guess I don't know for 100% sure, this property over here, is that entire parcel ours? Where we demoed the house and this side lot? Does anyone off the top of their head know?
So if we demoed it.
Demo house was ours, I
The demo house was ours, but it almost looks like this is a very large lot over
believe.
here.
Looks like it's a double lot, I don't know if
You
it's a double or
can't
a
look on
single.
GIS.
Oh, we
can't
can't.
doing that right now.
It's that corner where everything's down low. But
You can
if
go
it-
find shopping carts down in
Yeah,
there.
there's
It's
everything
like,
down
you know,
But if it's
fires.
ours, should we be cutting the grass?
Well, probably.
I think it was on the 200 block too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I guess I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention. And I would like to try to come up with, you know, a remedy. And when Bob and I talked, we said, you know, does it make sense because this side, and it doesn't do it, the picture doesn't do it justice how steep the hill is right here into this little gully. The sidewalk going up Sullivan is fine. But this one, you turn the corner here and there's major erosion going on. And, you know, does it make sense just to close and clean it up, haul out the old chunks of cement and just not have a sidewalk there? I don't know if you can do that. I don't know what
So is it the terrain?
the terrain is.
Bob, would blacktop make more sense there? Can we do blacktop sidewalks?
We tell people all the time they can't. so-
Yeah, I believe it doesn't meet the.
Yeah, but what if it?
I thought we changed those rules. I didn't
Wouldn't
think
that
that was a
be-
law. I thought that was just an encouragement.
Because the city did it over by John Ash Community Center too.
I
Right
know
with
we
the.
told people for years they
Sorry.
couldn't do it.
No, but when the terrain dictates that something like blacktop is more conforming, it's less brittle. You know what I mean? Like,
And it's definitely cheaper when it falls down the hill again. You just pour more. It's almost
And
like
if-
clean fill.
John, if you keep going down,
what I
doesn't it
mean.
hook up with, there's a sidewalk the whole length of that street?
Oh, there's there's a sidewalk the whole length of 7
So-
on both sides.
So what you said about taking it out, it would just be at the top towards the corner, there wouldn't be a sidewalk.
Possibly. That was probably the most economical solution. I think the other solution would be a massive retaining wall structure that would be very costly.
But we own that lot now,
Yes, we do. 305 North 7th Street.
so it's kind of up to the city to take care of.
Backed out incorrectly, so I
We
won't.
barricaded out the last 6 months. Any like remedy is probably pretty expensive.
Well, we can't just leave it. We can't
maybe
just
the
leave it
best-
barricaded
Why?
Oh.
because we wouldn't, we wouldn't expect a homeowner. If that was a homeowner's property,
Yeah.
would we allow them to just
Take
barricade
to
it?
court.
Done that on First Street for 10 years, but
Well, I know you can
the
send.
best solution is to remove it. I think just eliminate that portion of the sidewalk.
Yeah, because the contractor's
Look
not
at
gonna
it
pay for
closely,
the sidewalk.
It's really an erosion control issue. There's no good way to get that sidewalk back in place.
I didn't hear an answer, by the way, on the blacktop question. Would that be a better solution for the erosion situation?
I think it'd probably move with the earth.
Okay.
So I think it'd get out of compliance pretty quickly.
Okay.
Same way the blocks have kind of slid off.
Probably wouldn't make that much of a difference then.
Yeah, I think it'd be tough to put anything there, like, 4 feet wide.
So the sidewalk on this side and the dip down is not much different than the sidewalk across the street that you have the other picture. That's kind of eroding underneath.
Right.
Right.
This is.
Where is that?
It's across the street.
200 block North 7th.
You just turn around.
801 West Sullivan
But
Street.
South
here,
side and-
couldn't you use fill there? I mean, the sidewalk's intact,
South
what's
side, west.
underneath, right?
This is the west side.
Yeah,
I mean,
not our property.
try to push fill in though. You know what I mean? A lot of
Is
times
that
you.
going down
And
the hill
rocks.
towards Mazda Sheet Metal?
Yeah,
Or is
uh,
that going down
No,
the
it's the
hill
other
towards,
way,
that's
right?
going down the other side of the hill?
Yeah.
He's looking as if it's going down towards
This
that
one
Washington
is
Street.
going down towards Mazza.
Okay.
The other one's going
That's
the other
good.
side of the
You're
hill.
turning right
The
around.
other one's turning right around
Mhm.
and looking,
South?
Towards Washington.
South. yep, up over the peak of 7th, and then down, down.
So a different contractor bought that one, but it is a contractor who owns it,
But we're gonna, so
not the city.
we need to do something.
So
I don't know.
I foresee long-term problems here, though. Like, right, so you just say, hey, we're not gonna have a sidewalk on the other side of the street because it's just gonna be an erosion problem. But eventually, that erosion will affect the street, and then it affects the house the next block up because the hill just keeps sliding. I'm not saying that the city does its due diligence to hold the rock on the hill, but prevent all the houses from sliding down. But it eventually could turn into that.
So I wanted to make you all aware. I can maybe do some follow-up with Bill and Bob to try to get some suggestions. And,
Must come up with a plan.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, 'cause like you said, if it was a homeowner, we'd be after them to fix it.
Agreed. Any other questions?
Okay. Moving on, I want to talk about something that's not on the agenda. Do I have to make a motion to do that? Make a time to do it?
Just a discussion item.
It's just a discussion item, and it's not on the agenda because I just got the email from the guy from the DEC at 2:30 this afternoon. And this is regarding deer abundance and deer management in the city limits. I've had complaints in the West End for years about deer, and I've had people from Ward 1 talk about it. You know, anywhere where you're on the periphery of the city, you have a lot of deer. I don't have any scientific data that there's more deer now than there were 12 years ago, but it sure feels like there's a lot more. I mean, they're just everywhere. And they do a lot of destruction to people's vegetation and yards, and cars hit them, and they're a public nuisance and a public endangerment. Anyways, the DEC does have management programs. These are active, especially up near Buffalo in the suburbs, and they work with people up there to do it. This gentleman, Ryan Rockefeller, who I've had a conversation with and exchanged emails, I believe he said in just a single suburb they'll pull 200 deer out a year on one of these suburbs, and they're doing it in a lot of suburbs. So, not that Olean's going to get 200 deer on the West End, but there's a lot down there. This gentleman is more than willing to come in and talk to the council and the mayor and tell us what the program is and how it works and what you have to do to do it. He's not, and John, I didn't know you were going to reach out to him. I'm sorry, I had already emailed him, but then you emailed him. He is available on August 27th.
Okay.
And my concern is these, make a long story short, the way you control deer is you eliminate them. You can talk to them and do all kinds of other things, but that really doesn't
Trap
work.
neuter release programs, not for
No, it's called culling, C-U-L-L-I-N-G, which means shooting them and processing them and et cetera, and cutting down the herd, because there's no natural predators in the city. They just multiply around here. And these programs take a while to set up if we were so inclined to do that. But he did feel that if we met in August that we could get one rolling if we got right on it. And so, anyways.
Nate,
What was the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, would the state of New York be involved? Because there's, where I see them is coming across 16, coming into Ward 1 over that way. We've had someone that took down one of the fences, and the deer crossed there. So I was just curious if New York State would be a part of it.
I don't know. We'd have to hear that. I do know from what I've spoken to him that you have to find a place where you can do this, where you can eliminate them, and you bait them in, and it's typically done in January and February when it's very cold and there's not very many people out, because safety is the #1 concern, and you have to pick the right spot.
There's not a lot of food.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of food and they're hungry, so you bait them in and eliminate them that way, and then you have to find some volunteers who are willing to do this, maybe city employees,
Business card?
police department possibly.
Something else, just off the top of my head, there's a few people in your ward that have it now, and they are saying it's from the deer population. But I wonder if reaching out to Dr. Watkins and finding out one of the people in the city of Olean with Lyme's disease as a result of that would be an interesting statistic.
Yeah, that's one of his comments
Just
on
how,
here is Lyme disease control.
Well, and ticks too.
Yeah, and tick control. So,
What was the reason? Like, have we had anybody hit a deer in the city of Olean? Have we had?
Well, I saw one get hit right down by Tops.
Yeah, I've seen
it.
him hit the road on the west end.
Mexico up to her on Genesee. Police had to dispatch a deer there that was hit by a car.
Really?
Really?
Front
Early this
Street,
morning,
too.
yeah.
No kidding.
Genesee and Hamilton seem to get a lot of
They
them.
had to
A lot of
dispatch
deer
the
in
deer.
East Olean too.
They're all over
I'm
Seneca
excited
Heights
by
too.
one
So
walk.
I mean,
That Front Street lot over there
Yeah.
where the school lot, there's deer.
They're there.
Wow.
Always
Oh, I
been
bet
there.
you have some up by you too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I personally think it'd be worthwhile listening to hearing what this guy has to say.
Can't hurt.
Yeah, can I read you just a few brief paragraphs from him? My recommendation is to start identifying what your 2 or 3 major deer concerns are, how you're going to monitor these unpacks moving forward and then put them into writing. Also, I might be exploring by what means the city is hoping to conduct a call, who is going to do the shooting, where the calling would take place, and also where the venison is going to go. The municipality usually needs to pay the processing fee to donate towards venison donation coalition. Lastly, you might want to begin exploring other means to minimize deer impacts, such as educational materials to residents, deer abatement techniques for plantings, gardens, tick bite prevention, additional deer crossing signage, etc. All of this could be discussed prior to meeting with me. That way we have more specifics to go on when I'm there. So
This guy's with the DEC?
he's New York State DEC.
He also wants to look at the sewer lines.
The email I sent you guys has a lot of interesting, and I recommend the one that said deer management program. It kind of gives you the synopsis of this and overview, but it's pretty interesting material. Yeah. So if it's okay with everybody, I would coordinate with the mayor and John and see if we can get this gentleman to come in and tell us about the program, and if everyone likes it, we can move forward. If not,
I would
we'll just
even
put up with the deer.
include Dr. Watkins, because the health department, even if we get to a point where we do this and then there's the processing, the health department would have to probably be involved with that to make sure it's done the right way and who the meat goes to. I know we do it at the food pantry. We get venison. But he's another one I think that would
Venison
change our
Day.
trip.
Every year, we have Venison Day. We need more events in the city.
Does that sound okay with you, Mayor?
I'm good with it.
Okay. Then I'll reach out to him and say, we'll put it on the calendar and we'll hear what he has to say.
Mhm.
Respond and CC John. Is that the best way to do it, John?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. There's no committee reports, correct?
Nope.
Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
Finance? Sure. Seeing that I'll call the Committee of Finance to order. The only Alderman not present is Alderman George. Approval of the minutes of previous committee. I'll make a motion.
Second?
Seconded by Alderman Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
A monthly finance and bills reviewed. Did everybody look through their bills?
Yes.
Did you have any questions? I just had one. The maintenance of streets, I see the waste services. Was that was the cleanup week, right? Is that the final bill? Is there going to be any others?
Where we at then?
Oh, I'm sorry, on page 3. It's under maintenance of street and general fund. 11,000.
How much was it?
11,000.
That sounds about right.
So we won't be getting any further bills on it.
And what was the value?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
okay. I was just curious if that was a final bill. Okay. Also, I have, if anyone wants to look at it, the updated amount from our outside counsel that our city attorney gave me, if you'd like to look at that. So, no further questions? Unfinished business, PL 02-19, Alderman Crawford, to amend the City of Olean Code of Ordinance, Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 3, Audit and Compliance Committee Report Policy.
Okay, so this is one that's been going on for quite a while now. We'd like to try to wrap this up. This is pretty close to a finalized draft. Met with Bob for an hour today to review and get at least, I mean, obviously this pertains to all department heads, so all department heads should have certainly any feedback they deem necessary. Just pick on Bob because he does most of the capital projects. So I got his thoughts on it. Ernie and I have worked on this and cleaned this up. So if we'll just kind of run through this. This is what our recommendation, the Audit and Compliance Committee's recommendation is on a project policy. Regarding change orders, a change order is work that is added to or deleted from the original scope of work of a contract, which alters the original contract amount and or completion date. the change order process is established to provide approval authority for various types of change orders and monetary amounts for capital improvement projects. All change orders are to be documented on a form by the responsible department head. All change orders must be within the approved project funding and the original scope of the project as authorized by the Common Council. The responsible project manager will notify the mayor, Common Council, and city auditor of any change order execution via email or written notice. So the next comes kind of with the different levels. Again, our job is not to hinder projects, slow them up, but to provide transparency and oversight. So the first level would be the department head has a final change order authority if the following amounts are not exceeded. A single change order, whether cost or credit, up to $10,000. So anything under that $10,000 threshold would be notification as per the responsible project manager has to notify the mayor, Common Council, and city auditor of any change order execution. But as far as any sort of formal authorization, anything under $10,000 can happen by the department head. Then the mayor has the final change order authority if the following amounts are not exceeded. A single change order, whether it be cost or credit, up to $25,000, and or an extension of time exceeding 15 working days. From that $25,000 threshold onward, any levels that exceed that cost or credit over $25,000 must receive mayoral and Common Council approval. Within the change order valuation would include a 15% contingency, a 5% field change allowance, and associated administrative fees. So we're making sure we are not, that we're providing adequate budget for the change order itself. Change orders authorized by the mayor. Okay, so anything really within that we would call a material amount between $10,000 and $25,000 that has mayoral authorization would be placed on the Common Council Finance Committee's agenda after the mayor's approval, and just essentially we discuss it in a finance meeting, and rather than just maybe a one-sentence email notification that we might get otherwise, just hey, this is what happened. It was $24,000. It was a change order to the farmers market project, and this is why we did it. Okay, so just a little bit additional transparency there. After changes are approved, financing options, if required, will be discussed and secured by the mayor, Common Council, department head, as well as the city auditor. So, whether it's the department head's proposal to tap into contingency or to use field change, or if we need to secure additional funding, that's part of this process as well. Sometimes simpler is better. I think, this is not, like I said, tying projects down to where every time they got to do a change of $2,000, they're going to need council approval or anything like that. This does provide some different thresholds that I think makes sense. We do have some examples. All right, let me finish. I guess we'll go ahead and finish this, and then I'll get back to this. So the second part would be the capital project updates. This would be just reporting, okay, of ongoing capital projects, including a project summary, schedule, timeline of all projects in process in excess of $50,000. Again, I think we need to look at material projects, right? So you could have a couple smaller $10,000 projects. We don't need to inundate the manager with that, and we don't need to inundate our email with that. And this is just to be provided to the Common Council on a monthly basis. It doesn't necessarily need to have an actual formal report in here. It could be an email update, kind of like how Fred sends out some of the financial updates to us on a quarterly basis. Project financial report includes the project budget, approved changes, actual incurred costs. Additionally, there's a reconciliation, just making sure the project funding that has been received or acquired matches with the funding needed for project completion, okay? And the key there is any project that is underfunded or has any shortfalls, the mayor and common council is notified immediately and a corrective action plan will be provided. Okay. Do we want to reference your handout? So I think in each spot you can take a look at, if you wouldn't mind, what the kind of the process looks like. There is a change order approval form that Mr. Ring has put together. Okay, so really, in my meeting with Bob, anytime there is changes of dollar values, you know, from what maybe a bid was, an estimate was, he has to fill out change order approval forms. And depending on the dollar value, we go back to the authorization levels. You know, sometimes it might be immaterial, sometimes it might be more material. So I think, you know, this would not necessarily require, you know, higher levels of signature or authorization, but if it goes over $25,000, it would come to the council.
Yeah, I was in this form when I started, and we've been using it in our capital projects. Contractors like to use their own way of tracking, and this is probably kind of confusing, you know, looking at it at this point in the project. It makes more sense at the beginning of the project when you're tracking, you know, the estimates and the bid, and then, you know, payments and change orders. The mayor and Carrie know I update this every month after payments. We all sit down, we go over everything. I think the mayor signed off on all our change orders up to this point. So we've got a process of communication in place that works for all project managers, and at least for me. There's no reason why I can't copy council on change order approvals and monthly financial updates. Keep in mind that every project is very different. They have to be evaluated different, and keep in mind that every project is fluid. So that's why I've tried to introduce field change payment that gives us kind of a 5% leeway with the total project cost, something that can be used. Change order has to be done, even if we're using field change payment, which is in the price of the money, and then hopefully the project has contingency too in case you have some cost overruns. Just like we found out on North Union Street, projects can go over 10% very quickly, very easily. So keep that in mind. There's no guarantee that projects aren't going to go over budget, but the communication will be in place, the tracking will be in place.
In this particular example, with this format, this would require mayor approval?
So if you take a look at, I guess the way that I would look at this is down each level of the bids. So we have, for example, the first line.
The total highlighted one. Is
total
that
highlighted.
Change order?
Total contingency plus change field payment.
That's the remaining funds that we have available.
Oh, that's right. Where is the change order?
If-
Yeah, change order amount.
If you take a look at the along the right-hand column, you see what the base bid was for Kinley Corporation was $930,000, and you go over to the right, the additional concrete was $933,000. So there's only been, although there's like 4 or 5 different change orders, there's only really been about $3,000. So that wouldn't even necessarily require under. Now Bill obviously can instruct his staff to do whatever it is he wishes, but at least under under this policy, we would just receive notification that these changes happened, and it wouldn't necessarily require mayoral approval. Although if Bill wishes that, that's fine. If you go down though to the plumbing contract, right, that would require, number one, we would receive notification, but it's under 25,000, so it would absolutely receive at least a mayoral approval, right? And part of that in our monthly update would be, Bob, that's a really good example to reference. What's the change order for $12,000 there?
So we had an initial change order for 3,000, in the main building, but then we all met and discussed putting water and sewer in the bistro building.
Okay, so you, yeah.
That was a significant
Yeah.
change order.
Right.
We vetted it, we talked
We had the
about
street
it.
open anyway, so we said, let's put it now.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that just, again, from a transparency standpoint, it doesn't require council approval, but at least we're notified and we're aware that that happened. Okay. So this isn't, I think we have to, do we have to doctor this up and put a policy like this into legalese, or is that typically?
We refer it for resolution.
Okay.
Resolution form that you vote on at the next meeting.
Okay, so,
Or,
2 weeks from Tuesday, we have to publish it.
so well, I guess if I want any feedback, I mean, I guess, you know, this is probably, I know this is the first time Bill has gotten to see it, so maybe it might be good to let Bill have a chance to kind of digest it and look it over. And, you know, is there any off the top of your head, Bill, any comments or thoughts?
No, initially, this looks pretty good. So, but I would like to.
Yeah, okay.
What I'd like to do is what we were talking about, I talked to the others about
Sure.
this. And,
The point is to try to get buy-in
Right.
from everyone. So you know, this is
I don't
not.
think the other department heads have been included other than Bob. So
Right.
Give them the opportunity to,
Yep.
you know, and they may not have any suggestions at all, so, but.
Yep, that's fair. Again, I think it's most important to just make sure that we get organizational buy-in. And so this is not we've kicked this down the road a little longer than I would have liked, but I think we're nearing the end. So, so I guess then I'll just make a motion to postpone this until the next time around, and we'll get some feedback from the mayor and the department heads, and we have to do a couple little tweaks, that's fine, but I think this is we're pretty close.
I'll second that.
Okay, so,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, new referrals for consideration. Anybody? We have none. Okay, discussion. Sorry. Oh. Yes, and you missed that one. Oh,
So
I'm
you could
sorry.
just probably move that down after that.
Okay. We're going to bounce back up to fiscal year 2018-19 year-end summary. So that would be Fred.
I'll go ahead and just, I mean, unless Fred wants to jump in, I talked to Fred earlier about this. We're waiting on some final things to kind of come in from the state. Is that right, Fred?
Yes.
So I asked, you know, Bill and Fred to put this on, you know, to get this on the agenda, but there are some material things that we're waiting on from the state. So I would like to push this to the,
Next one.
what are we thinking?
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks? Yeah.
Okay.
They could have some real firm numbers
All right.
for the final numbers for 18-19 that will put some numbers that make sense.
All right, so that would be July 30th.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, now to new referrals. Discussion of the 85,000 fund transfer for additional sewer lining. I'm assuming this is
Yeah, you can refer to, doing first with the map that I provided. As you know, we put out a sewer lining contract every year. The lines are roughly 750 feet. Sanitary sewer, right now we're working our way between sanitary sewer plant and electric pump station. That pipe is corrugated metal pipe. A year ago, we had a discussion, you all approved additional funding for sewer lining because in this process you have to go from manhole to manhole. So in order for us to spend $250,000 that's budgeted and basically required by the consent order, we would have to end at the middle of the line, which is impractical through this process, so I requested additional funding. We talked about a plan of getting to the 4th Street pump house in 3 years. Again, this process is really important. It's non-invasive, meaning we don't have to dig up sanitary sewer lines, but the life is extended for, at least what they're told is, 20, 30, 40 years, a long period of time. Anyone who knows that works around piping, knows that the corrugated metal pipe presents, a lot of erosion issues, likely, leaching issues. It's near the river. This was obviously identified for a purpose. So, again, I showed you what we did in 2018 and 2019 is what we're proposing. To do that last section, it's 526 feet on the right side of the blue highlighter, would require an additional 85,000 in sewer lining funding above and beyond the 250,000 we had budgeted. I think it's worthwhile to perhaps take that funding out of contingency or fund balance, continue on with this process again. Once the water sewage treatment plan is completed, this is our most important process for fighting infiltration and perhaps adverse environmental effects.
Mm-hmm. Now you're talking about the sewer contingency?
Sewer contingency is only 75.
I would almost be in favor of suggesting we took out our fund balance. Our fund balance is
Sewer
quite
fund.
hefty.
What's the sewer
Enough
fund
to
balance?
certainly absorb it. I'm sorry.
You told us last week, but remind me again what the sewer
I thought
fund
it was
is.
1.5 million, but I think it's closer to 2, so we certainly have it.
Mm-hmm. Fred, remember the project down at the sewer plant? Did we have any money left from that? Or is that totally gone? From the project itself?
We're going to come in under budget, but there is no money left over because we would draw, the EFC we would submit vouchers and the EFC would cover those vouchers, so we don't have money left over.
Okay, so.
We're not gonna borrow as much as we thought.
Gotcha, okay. I just thought that could be an alternative.
I think we talked about that before, and that's not, I believe that would not be in the scope of the project that was done at the plant. So we did inquire, and I believe we asked the engineer, Manny, there on that, and that would be.
It wouldn't be included?
Yeah.
Okay, just a thought.
I think, obviously we're going to do sewer lines and extending the life, but I just want to remind everybody that last week we talked about taking $270,500 from sewer fund balance, and with the additional 85 being requested out of sewer fund balance again this year, that would mean taking $355,000 in a year out of sewer fund balance. So if we knew about this, were we not able to budget for it in the last year?
I left it, where I thought I left it was that, we would reevaluate in a year, but with the intention of asking, for additional funding out of fund balance. That money doesn't have to be, I'm sorry to use that wording, but it's important to put that towards projects, especially with the consent order, and I've kind of attached a copy of that shows that we're required to spend a certain amount.
Which this is on top of that, right? 355,000 is on top of the 250.
Yes.
The 250 is part of the budget.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're taking 250.
So we're not
plus-
spending 5 something,
Right.
okay.
We're not
But the
taking
point
it
is,
out
we're
of
putting
fund
that
balance.
much money in the
We
sewer.
budgeted 250, yeah, the 85 would
Right.
come out of fund balance.
Right, but if we're spending $250,000 a year, that seems to me pretty material as far as, and it can only go towards sewer linings, right?
Right.
And that's because we asked the question, can we use $250,000 towards that,
Project.
the project that we discussed last week, and you said no,
He wasn't sure.
or you
No,
weren't
you
sure.
said no.
Right, that's why I included this. My interpretation is that it is now, that just that money has to go to their distribution system above and beyond their capital project septic requirements.
Is there any way to get clarification on that?
I mean, you can read it here, I don't know.
No, I mean from the DEC.
Construction season might be over by the time we get
Full
it.
consent order,
Right.
going through it.
Oh. I was explaining this to a constituent the other day. They were asking about, they were talking about DEC consent orders and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, DEC wants us to replace sewer lines, and eventually it'll be water lines, and I think we do have something about water lines, don't we? No. Well, I mean,
State controller's office is actually for water lines.
gotcha.
At least.
But all these different things. I mean, this is, hey, we can't afford to replace. If a car tire lasts you 4 years and we don't have enough money to replace one tire a year, we're just kicking the can down the road, just hoping each tire doesn't pop each year. I was explaining this to a constituent. You know what I mean? They don't see that, it costs us $700,000 for a half a mile of water lines, and they should be replaced sooner than every 100 years. Well, if you had to replace them every 100 years, I think it's like we'd have to spend $1.4 million a year on water lines. Is how we factored it out based on a guesstimate of how many miles of water line are in the city, and we're probably way under. And I'm just thinking the sewer lines is kind of the same thing. You've got to keep maintaining this, and $250,000 is a drop in the bucket for where we actually should be. I don't know. If Bob came to us and said we need to spend $750,000 a year, I'd say I can expect it. I don't like it, but I can expect that with how many miles of sewer line we have. So.
But at the same time, we have a finite amount of money to deal with.
Sure. No, I hear you. No.
Right, right.
And I guess if we're being required to spend $250,000, why would we want to spend more than that a year?
Yeah, is this pressing, Bob, or just convenient? And if we don't do the $85,000 lining, don't we just pick that up in the following year with the $250 that we're spending?
Sure, I mean, I guess think about it this way, if we're replacing 1,000 feet of line, and again, we have 500,000 feet of line, we're not making a very big dent. I know eventually, we can't continue to spend $350,000 every year, because our fund balance would continue to go like this, and just trying to balance everything. I mean, we're in a close situation.
Yeah. Other than taking a bigger bite and kind of getting the jump on it, is there an immediate concern of a collapse or something, or just this would be handy to get more done?
I think there's an immediate concern. I mean, for the amount, I know we're required to do this, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, but this is a problem that needs to be addressed. I mean, again, Nate, I'm sure that you can relate to corrugated metal pipe. I mean, go look at anyone around town with corrugated metal. The bottom of it's eroded out. We don't for sure know the condition of those lines. They're cambered beforehand, but
I guess my only concern, like Nate was saying, is that the siphon thing came up last week, so that was 270. And if we keep taking from the fund balance, we're gonna have these emergency situations. The generator went when we were pouring raw sewage in. So I guess piggybacking that, I don't know if you are on the same thought process, or is it better to wait and keep that $85,000 and see, God forbid, something happens where we're pouring sewage somewhere else in another year, God forbid,
this is
then
the
lining it.
pouring sewage problem. This is the problem. That's why we prioritized it in the way that we did.
So my concern is, Bob, you're absolutely right. These are probably top concerns. Where I come from though is that the reason we built that fund balance off is to pay for the $20 million sewage treatment plant that we're going to be paying debt payments on for how long. And that's part of the reason why we built, so we don't have to be raising sewage rate 10 or 20%. Isn't that part of the reason? That's what I kept hearing, why the fund balance is as large as it is. Is that right, Fred?
Yeah, we didn't know years ago what that whole project cost would be, and what we could afford to, how much we could afford to raise our rates for like 5 years ago. So that fund balance included a lot of assumptions, I guess. And in hindsight, maybe we didn't have to raise it 5%, but we did create a larger fund balance.
But that fund balance is now intended to help offset raising rates 10, 20%, because we got a $20 million bond to pay back.
That's the council's call, how how to spend it or how to use it.
But if we,
The way that I interpret this is that was a luxury of raising the rates to the level where our annual budget could pay for that $620,000 payment. The fund balance was as a result of taking 3 years building up rates, and we grew a big fund balance, which in turn, and if you look again at the master plan, requires us to do these projects.
Yeah, it
yeah,
does,
understood.
it does.
I think it's a natural step, even though it means for now our fund balance is dwindling slightly.
So does that mean that we're gonna now double rates to increase the fund balance?
No, and
No.
that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just suggesting let's get some more projects done for now, especially these high priority ones, and then reevaluate.
Yeah, Madge,
So maybe we don't have to look at increasing rates next year.
The second project is not a this year thing, likely. I think it's a couple of years, and maybe we can talk about it in budget time and how we can fund it. It's not just, it doesn't 100% have to come out of fund balance if we can figure out a way to fund it.
A lot of times I take my alderman hat off for like water and sewer discussions, just because I feel like if we're the board of directors at NICEAG or National Grid and they're talking about not replacing a gas line, you know what I mean? And you think about what constituents as customers would be if you just all of a sudden sewers backing up everywhere because they're leaching into the groundwater, and DEC finds out that it's not making its way down the sewer to the treatment plant.
But we are. We're doing $250,000.
No, I understand that, but
Replacements.
but if
I don't understand your analogy.
I'm just saying, like, we saved this money, right? And it was all to hedge against this sewer treatment plant potential, service debt payment. So now all of a sudden we've generated enough money where we should be able to start covering those. We've got some fund balance. We should put it into the infrastructure because that's the bread and butter for sewer and water is sewer lines for sewer. I mean, it should get spent on infrastructure because in 10 years from now, there's going to be more sewer lines that are rotting out that need replaced.
I can follow that theory as long as we're not increasing sewer rates.
But it doesn't sound like Bob's suggesting that for next year.
Okay,
I'm not
I'm
suggesting
remembering
that.
that right now.
I guess to throw a 5-year plan at you with, the sewer lining, it's like more of a 2 or 3 year plan. I think there's opportunities for grant funding, perhaps to even fund this $250,000 or however, whatever number it's going to be at year to year. Those opportunities, I'm not saying they're being missed, but, I'm only one person, Carrie's only one person. So to hire, the water sewer superintendent that we're getting to, that person can focus on grant projects and capital projects, and then I think stabilize our, at least sewer in general, our sewer fund.
Can I ask you a question though? On those grants though, would they give us a grant to pay a consent order of $250,000? I doubt they would. I'm guessing the
That
grant would
helps.
be to do this.
You'd be surprised, that actually, you're scoring better when you're under consent order, when you're under some kind of government consent. You're more likely to get funded that way.
stating it's an emergency.
There are a lot of municipalities that are using grant funding year after year to do sewer line.
Is that this year's budget? What did we pull out of, did we pull anything out of fund balance?
$200,000 in sewer. We talked about this 3
Right.
months ago.
Right.
We talked about a lot of things, but I did say next year we have $100,000 coming off the debt schedule for sewer, so that 200, maybe 100 next year, all things being equal.
Right. But we're still taking out of fund balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we raised rates,
Next.
what, 1.5%?
Yeah. We're almost at a point where we're breaking even, or the rates are, we're sustaining ourselves.
The rates
Which
can
is
never
which is really my long-term goal. And just, spending down fund balance until we are sustainable is there's always gonna be a project. And I guess I would like to see, or hear more.
I think to piggyback on what you just said, John, there's always going to be projects, and year after year, councils look back at the previous councils and say, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they spend money on this? And now we're that council, and I think, to me, this is by the river. It's connected basically to that 4th Street pump station. We've already had an issue there. I think the 85,000 is a good, this is a good thing to spend it on. And I think we can sit on the money, you know, that's easy to do. But I think when we're preaching to people about, you know, previous mayors, previous councils have kicked the can down the road, we're doing the same thing if we don't start just taking little projects. And this isn't a huge project, you know, just by looking at it. I mean, I'm not into the sewer project. But I just think that this is a project